The moment 17-year-old Cassandra pushed open the heavy oak door of the Iron Ridge Tavern in Harlan, Kentucky, every head in the room turned. The laughter came almost immediately, low at first, then louder, rippling through the smoky bar like a stone skipping across dark water. She was young, slight, with dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail, wearing a gray hoodie beneath a leather vest that looked like it had lived 10 lifetimes before it ever found her shoulders. The men seated around the scarred wooden tables were members of the Iron Wolves, a motorcycle club that had claimed this corner of Kentucky for over 50 years, and to them, this teenage girl walking into their sacred space wearing what appeared to be a poorly fitting club vest was either the funniest thing they'd seen all week, or the most disrespectful. Either way, not one of them was ready for what was about to happen next. If this story already has your attention and you believe that kindness and respect can come from the most unexpected places, please take a second right now to like this video, drop a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to this channel. We tell stories that remind us what it means to be truly human, and this one is going to stay with you. Cassandra had driven 40 minutes from the small town of Bledsoe on a second-hand bicycle, her knuckles white around the handlebars the entire way. She hadn't told her mother where she was going. Her mother, Patricia, was still deep in the fog of grief that had settled over their house like a permanent winter since the funeral 6 weeks ago. Cassandra hadn't cried much, not because she didn't feel the loss, but because somebody had to keep standing. Somebody had to go get answers. And the only place she believed those answers existed was inside this bar, with these men who had known her father longer than she had been alive. Her father's name had been Marcus Webb. To Cassandra, he was the man who made Sunday morning pancakes and sang off-key to old country songs on the radio. To the Iron Wolves, he had been something far larger. But Cassandra hadn't known that, not fully, not until she found the box beneath the floorboard in his workshop 3 weeks after the burial. Inside that box was a leather vest, a collection of photographs, a folded letter she had read so many times the creases were beginning to tear, and a single patch she didn't immediately understand. It was only after calling her uncle Raymond in Tennessee that she learned what the patch meant, and why it mattered more than anything else in that box. She had worn the vest into the bar because it was the only way she knew how to speak without words. She was terrified. Her hands were trembling beneath the table of her jacket sleeves as the laughter continued to echo around her. One of the men near the back, big, broad-shouldered, with a gray beard that touched his collarbone, called out something to his friend, and the two of them shook their heads with the casual cruelty of people who have never once considered that they might be wrong. Another man near the window raised his glass with a smirk. Cassandra kept walking forward. She didn't stop. She had promised herself she wouldn't stop. It was Gerald, the club's road captain, who first went quiet. He was seated closest to the center of the room, and as Cassandra moved past the edge of the bar light, the full back of the vest caught the overhead glow. Gerald's glass stopped halfway to his lips. His eyes narrowed. He leaned forward slowly, the way a man does when he's not sure he can trust what he's seeing, and then he set his drink down on the table with a soft, deliberate clink that somehow cut through all the noise. The laughter began to die. One by one, the other men followed Gerald's gaze. The smirks dissolved. The jokes evaporated mid-sentence. Because they're on the back of that vest, beneath the Iron Wolf's top rocker, beneath the eagle patch with its spread wings and fierce golden eyes, beneath the small tan badge that read 1971, was a bottom rocker that none of them had seen in over a decade. And below that, stitched in bold cream-colored letters on a black background, was the patch that changed everything in that room. Founding member. The silence that fell over the Iron Ridge Tavern was not the silence of emptiness. It was the silence of reckoning. Gerald stood up from his stool slowly, like a man rising in church. His chair scraped the floor and the sound of it seemed to echo. He walked toward Cassandra with measured steps, and she turned to face him, her chin raised, her eyes bright with tears she refused to let fall. She watched his face move through a sequence of emotions she couldn't fully name, recognition, confusion, grief, and something that looked almost like reverence. He asked her quietly whose vest it was, and she told him. She said her father's name, Marcus Webb, and she watched Gerald's jaw tighten and his eyes go red at the edges. He had not known Marcus was dead. None of them had. Marcus had left the club quietly years ago to raise his daughter and care for his ailing wife, surrendering his patch, or so they had believed. But Marcus had kept it. He had kept it hidden away in a box under the floor of the place he loved most in the world, wrapped alongside photographs of the brothers he had never stopped loving, even in his silence. Gerald reached out and placed one large, weathered hand on Cassandra's shoulder. Then he turned to the room, and what he said next was something Cassandra would carry inside her chest for the rest of her life. He told every man in that bar that the girl standing before them was the daughter of the man who had founded this club with nothing but $40, a borrowed garage, and a belief that loyalty was the only currency that mattered. He told them that Marcus Webb had stitched the very first patch onto the very first vest with his own hands, and that the eagle they wore on their backs existed because of him. He told them that if any man in that room had laughed at his daughter, they owed her an apology that no words would ever be sufficient to cover. The big man with the gray beard, whose name was Theodore, was the first to stand. He crossed the room slowly and stopped in front of Cassandra, and this enormous man who had laughed the loudest bowed his head and told her he was sorry. Not a performative sorry. Not a quick, embarrassed sorry. A real one, cracked open at the edges, the kind that cost something. And then the man beside the window, Clifton, stood as well. And then another. And another. Until the whole room was on its feet, not laughing, not smirking, but standing in silence for a girl and the father who had built something that outlasted him. Cassandra finally let herself cry. She cried because she missed him so much it felt like a physical wound. She cried because she had come looking for proof that her father had mattered, and she had found a room full of it. She cried because grief, when it is witnessed by the right people, becomes something more bearable, not smaller, but shared, and sharing makes it survivable. Gerald sat with her for 2 hours that evening. He showed her photographs she had never seen, her father young and laughing, posing in front of motorcycles in dusty parking lots, his arm around men who were now gray and quiet but had once been wild and electric with the joy of brotherhood. He told her stories about Marcus that made her laugh and ache in equal measure. He told her that the club had a tradition of honoring its founding members, and that as long as the Iron Wolves existed, her father's name would be spoken at every gathering. Before she left, Theodore pressed something into her hand. It was a small iron pin, the club's symbol, and he told her it meant she would never walk into any Iron Wolves establishment in any state in this country and be anything other than family. Cassandra looked down at it for a long moment, and then she closed her fingers around it and held it tight. If this story moved something inside you, if it reminded you that people are almost always carrying something heavier than they appear, and that a moment of cruelty can be undone by a moment of grace, please like this video, share it with someone you love, and leave a comment below telling us what this story meant to you. Your engagement means everything to this channel and helps these stories reach the people who need them most. She rode home in the dark, the vest across her lap, the pin in her pocket. The night air was cold and clean and the stars over Harlan, Kentucky were the kind of stars that make you feel small in the best possible way. When she got home, her mother Patricia was awake in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a cup of tea gone cold, the way she often did now in the quiet hours. Cassandra sat down across from her and placed the vest on the table between them, and she told her mother everything. Patricia listened without interrupting, and when Cassandra finished, she reached across the table and covered her daughter's hand with her own and held it there in the silence of the kitchen for a long time. Before this story ends, drop a comment below and tell us, have you ever judged someone too quickly, only to learn their story changed everything? Marcus Webb had built something that outlasted him. He had planted seeds of brotherhood in a borrowed garage with $40 and a needle and thread, and 20 years after he had quietly walked away, those seeds had grown tall enough to shelter his daughter on the hardest night of her young life. That is the kind of legacy that no tombstone is wide enough to contain. That is the kind of love that does not end when a person does. It simply waits, patient and quiet, for the moment it is needed, and then it shows up, wearing a founding member's patch, in the back of a smoky bar in Kentucky, and it changes everything.